Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
And here with a kind-hearted woman named Rebecca, who has agreed to let me record this session so you can benefit from her observations and experience and strength and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Right, Rebecca?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Tell us a little bit about your food history. What was the worst of it? And then how can I help you?
Well, I feel like I'm like most people who come on here, and that I feel like I've struggled with food pretty much my whole life. There's even this story of me being a kid and eating so much chocolate and green peppers, which for some reason are my favorite foods, that I got so sick that my parents had to take me to the emergency room. And I've been struggling ever since, but I've kind of gone off and on different diets and trying to kind of, get a little bit more regulation around my eating. And there's been some times where it's gotten better, other times when it's gotten worse. Certainly in college and graduate school, that was much more difficult. But I guess the turning point or the starting point would really be at the beginning of 2020.
That's when the pandemic started, right?
Just before that, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. 2020 was actually a good year for me, which I'm lucky to be able to say that. I had binged the night before and I was at work and I couldn't focus on anything. And I was looking at Amazon to try and find something, a book or some sort of help. Finally, somebody who understands what I'm going through and has a solution to it. So it just made a lot of sense to me. And I had done it sort of just by reading through the book. And I had joined the intensive just for that little extra support and to kind of get more acclimated to the thought process and the philosophy. To be honest, that was probably not the best time for me just because there were a lot of other things going on in my life. And it was, plus it was COVID and all the uncertainty that came along with that. But it helped, but I learned that there were a lot of things that I really wasn't being vulnerable enough with my coach that I think I needed to be to really make life changes. And so I decided to re-up again this past July. And that was really helpful just to kind of build that relationship and safety net. And it just seems like at this point, I know what my rules are. I read my Big Why every morning. And I try to do a RTR every morning as well, just to get myself in the mindset to make sure that I'm following my rules and, again, kind of living up to the life that I want to live.
When you say that you weren't vulnerable enough with your coach the first time around, were you hiding things? Were you trying to look good in some way, prove that you're an A student? What was happening?
Yeah, well, the way that I cheat is that I will just pretend like it didn't happen, or I'll just say things didn't go well. I ended up binging this week, but the last couple of days have been really great and blah, 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 blah. And so I'll just talk about the good parts.
When in reality, you were really suffering.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But I think the biggest thing that I've gotten out of this whole process is going a little bit more meta and not just focusing on what I'm eating, but also focusing more on who I want to be as a person. And are the things that I'm doing in my life really helping me live up to the person that I want to be?
Tell me more about that.
Sure. Sort of came from the Big Why that you have us write in the intensive program. And I remember you saying a few times, this is not the person I want to be. It was something along the lines of, this isn't along the lines of the person I want to be. So that's why I don't choose to eat these certain foods or engage in these behaviors.
You want to connect your rules to not just an outcome like I'm going to lose weight, but to the character that you're trying to build, the kind of person you want to be in the world. Because eventually identity trumps willpower. Identity trumps the pig every time. When you start to get to the point that you're just not the kind of person who never eats chocolate again, then there's nothing the pig can say. There's nothing that trumps that when you've become a different kind of person. That's what I meant by that.
So much more well articulated.
Well, thanks.
Some of the main things that are important to me is being a good mother to my daughter and setting a good example for how to live a healthy lifestyle, which I certainly don't want her to have to go through a lot of the eating issues that I've had to deal with. And the other thing too is I want to see myself as being disciplined. And knowing those two things, it's really hard for the pig to come up with anything that would be tasty enough to warrant me to want to throw away those values.
Yeah. When you said you got more meta and thought more carefully about the values you're trying to portray and the things you're doing and whether it's consistent with that or not, could you give one or two examples of what that looks like?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So on my phone every morning, I read my food rules and my big why, which I've sort of morphed into this thing that says who I want to be. And I want to be the type of person who is responsible, who does what she said she's going to do, is disciplined, acts with intention, not emotion, eats healthy and feeds her daughter healthy foods, a person who exercises 3 times a week, and a person who is up by 7 a.m. 5 to 6 times a week. And then I have my food rules written down as well, which is I always log what I'm eating into a food app before I go to bed at night. I always weigh myself on Friday mornings just to keep track of how things are going. And then I never eat dessert, which I define as anything that would be put in the sweets food group on the food pyramid that they used to have back in the day. And a dessert is anything that's 2 hours after the last bite of my last meal.
Oh, very interesting. Very cool. Very
Well,
cool.
I've had a lot of input and practice with it. So,
And then how does that jive with your values and who you want to be?
so after I write those rules, then at the end of it, I always log my food. I'm kind of switching to a plant-based diet. So there's like certain, I guess, other rules too, like making sure I get at least 5 fruits and vegetables every day, but make sure I'm meeting my targets for the food app. I do this because it'll help me feel my best and will help me be my best self. I weigh myself weekly to keep accountable and track my weight loss progress. And I never eat dessert because it will set me up for a binge. And I can't control how much I'm able to eat because my brain is addicted to the binge food. And then at the end, I sort of have my saying, which is I want to be a thin, disciplined woman who's open to all life has to offer, both the good and the bad.
Lovely.
So there you go.
Lovely. And that's what's helping you.
Yes, very much. Well, and it just helps sort of set an intention for the day where this is what I'm trying to strive for.
Beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful. You. How can I help you?
Well, I've had a lot of practice, thankfully, and have learned a lot. But the biggest thing right now is that because I'm having so much success, I'm having a lot of anxiety about it. I suppose it sort of comes down to, I don't know, I'm just not used to being this healthy and in this mindset for so long. I sort of used to do this. I would be really good for 3 days, but I feel like I was using a lot of energy to be good, so to speak. And then the anxiety from that would lead me to binge. And I still feel like I still have that cycle where I'll be following my life plan, so to speak, or following my rules. And then after about a week, I start to get so anxious that I want to binge to relieve the anxiety.
And do you?
Honestly, I do feel like it relieves the anxiety because, well, it's sort of reinforcing what I suppose the pig is telling me, which is you're never going to be able to keep this up. So you might as well just binge now because you know it's going to happen in the future.
And then do you binge?
Usually, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And how long does it take you to get back on track?
Right now, it's usually just at night. Like it'll be a night binge. And then the next morning, I sort of reset and then I'll be good for another week.
How does that compare to what used to happen?
Oh gosh. I mean, even like before, sort of I mentioned in early 2020, it was at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay. So you've cut it down by 3 or 4 times. Are the binges as intense as they used to be?
No.
Okay, so you're doing less damage with them. That's good.
Mhm.
That's all good. And are you being honest with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Okay. And so that's perpetuating the pig's ability to say, I'll get you later. You can do this for a little while, but I'll get you later.
Yes, yes.
So that's the squeal. I'll get you later. So let's just go through a couple of practical things about this.
Okay.
First of all, there's something called an extinction burst.
Extinction burst.
It's called an extinction burst.
Okay.
This is research that's been around for a very long time, and I've just forgotten about it. But we used to think that extinction was linear. And what I mean by extinction is the extinction of the cravings and the binge behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to think that if you eliminated the reinforcement, that it would slowly fade out like a line sloping down like you'd see in a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we went over the research and we realized that what actually happens when there's an extinction event, when you withdraw the binging, you withdraw the reinforcer,
Mm-hmm.
is that there's a honeymoon period, and that seems to go for like 3 days, 4 days. If it's a binge behavior you did every day, if it's something you only did once a week, then it's 3 or 4 weeks. It tends to go for 3 or 4 units. And then all of a sudden, there's a real intensity of cravings. It's like our brains are trying to say, well, what happened? I used to be able to get my junk if I just had a fit, if I had a little tantrum. Now it's not there anymore. I'm going to try again. I'm not going to give up.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this burst of activity, burst of cravings. Hopefully you stick it out and you don't reward them. Then it goes down linearly for up until like 7 to 10 days. And then there's another little burst before the pig really gives up. So the reason that's important is that without that knowledge, you think there's something wrong, like the intensity of the craving should be dissipating day by day. It should always be better, always be better, always be better. But it's not really how it works. So that's the first thing. You should know that what you're experiencing is probably a normal part of extinguishing the behavior, and you just need to hold out. Don't let the pig tell you there's something wrong. The other thing is, if what your rules involve are taking in less calories, less processed food, less sugar, excess sugar can be stored in the muscle before it's taken from fat.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have a little deficit from the rules you've created. It will first take that from the muscle, and you're not going to lose an awful lot of weight right away. But then I think it's called gluconeogenesis or something, where it's trying to take the energy from fat. And at that point, the cravings are more intense. At that point, it's harder. And so the solution for that is to figure out about when it occurs for you in your cycle, and then plan a couple of days of refeeding. So let's say you're running at a 1 pound a week deficit and you tend to screw up around 10 days. So plan a day or two where you don't have any deficit at all, or maybe even a 200 calorie surplus or something, right? That could just give you the little extra edge you need to push through the extinction curve. So I wanted to mention those things. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, very helpful. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
It's nice to know I'm normal.
I didn't say you're normal. I'm just kidding.
Well, that's another consult, I think.
It's another consult. No, yes. As far as I can tell, you're normal. Okay. Well, what would it mean to you, Rebecca, if you could get through this, let's say for 90 days, and you didn't have even one binge for 90 days?
I think it would mean I'd feel a sense of peace around food. And it would leave me to be able to focus my energy on other things that are important to me than defeating the pig, and essentially build a fuller life, I suppose.
Let's try to expand on that. The pig wants us to kind of gloss over it because it doesn't want us to see the future. But what if we went into detail about it? What are the other things that you would be focusing on?
I know I'd be able to put more energy, and I'd have more mental space to do the things that I like to do. I'd be able to read more, dedicate more time to learning about things that I'm interested in, like politics and what's going on in the world. I'd also have more time to be present with my daughter, that mental clarity of spending like actual quality time together, as opposed to just sort of being in the same space and coexisting. It would give me more presence with the people who are most important to me.
Who else is important to you?
My mom and my friends, my aunt and dad, uncles, aunts, most of me and my family. Yeah, they're my support system, but I also have some really great close friends too. So.
How old is your daughter?
4.5, going on 16.
And why is it important to you? I know this sounds silly. Why would being more present and having quality time be important to you?
Well, connection and relationships are very important to me, and I want to build that for her. if I can be more present and not focused on not binging, then I think we can continue to develop our relationship. I can be a better disciplinarian. That's something I'm struggling with right now, hence my earlier comment. And I think I would be able to set a better example for her and the type of life I wouldn't just want for myself, but also the type of life that I would want for her.
Have there been things you found so far that you're willing to do for her that you couldn't do for yourself?
Yes.
Like what?
Well, I do not like to cook. Well, I should say, up until very recently, I was the type of person who always said, I don't cook. I want to eat healthy, but I don't really want to bother with cooking. I'll just buy stuff. But the more I'm trying to eat more healthy foods and less processed foods, it really came to the point where I realized that I had to start cooking. And I'm not too bad. I'm still learning a lot, but certainly that motivation to feed her healthy foods and not just feed her fast food constantly is something that really pushed me to, again, like start cooking and eating more unprocessed foods.
Beautiful. You said you want to read more. What would you like to read?
Well, right now I would like to read more parenting books.
You like to read, you want to spend more time with your mom and your friends and your aunts and your uncles. What happens if you don't put the pig in the cage? You leave it out for 5 years? What would happen?
I mean, I would really stop functioning in life, honestly. Well, I've been there, or at least had a glimpse of it shortly before I was able to turn things around at the beginning of last year. I couldn't really focus on work. I felt sick all the time. I was exhausted constantly, so I wasn't able to, well, in my opinion, adequately take care of my daughter. And I just was sad all the time because I knew there was more to life than just constantly eating. What I was telling myself was the only way I was able to get pleasure, which is not right, not true.
Would you like to make a firm commitment to the rules that you have now?
Yes.
Why does the pig say you can't do that? Why does the pig say you're going to fail?
Because I've tried so many times before that what makes me think that I would be able to do it again, or what makes me think that I have the fortitude to be able to do it this time.
Okay. What else?
Honestly, that's the main one.
That's it?
Am I able to ask you another question that I'm kind of struggling with? One other thing?
Ask me any question you want to.
So one thing that I'm also struggling with is that ice cream has always been a binge food for me. I'm sort of trying to decide if there's a way that I can incorporate it in my life for it to be able to eat it and not have it lead to a binge. Sometimes I think that might be possible. Other times I'm not so sure. And I guess my question for you specifically is, like, in reading about you, I know you had struggled with chocolate and eventually had made the decision like not to ever eat that. I guess my question would be is, do you feel like you're missing out on anything by not eating that? Yeah. No. Okay.
No. I don't even remember why it tasted so good. I don't even remember why I loved it so much. It took like 18 months before it got to that point. And I would get occasional cravings and I would miss it from time to time. I had to work really hard at all the refutations, and we didn't call it that back then, but I had to work hard at it for about 18 months to really get rid of those feelings of longing. They were down to 20% after a month or two. There are other things that I can have in my life, like I can have some beans, I can have some flour if I really want to. I don't particularly like the way I feel when I do. So maybe once a year I'll plan it out and schedule something and I'll say, oh, why did I do that? Chocolate I'll never eat again. Just no way.
And no regrets.
Really not. I regret not having done it 20 years ago.
All right. Well, I will keep that as my mantra, that maybe we can try it out for a month, no ice cream, and hopefully I can maybe have that sense of clarity that you have.
Oh, you'll be so happy you get over the hump with it. If it's really been torturing you, you'll be so happy.
Yeah.
You'll be more present for your daughter, your family. And every time I take a step up, the pig tells me I'm going to be tortured. And every time I'm just delighted after a couple of weeks at how much better life is without it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Okay.
But I think as far as the pig squeals, as you were saying before, honestly, that's the main one, is that you're not mentally strong enough to deal with the cravings and you're not going to be able to do this. You might be able to go for a week or a little bit more than that, but you're never going to be able to abstain from binging for the rest of your life.
So there's this mythical time called eventually in the future that you're going to binge. Have you tried to refute that?
Yes.
And what have you tried?
I have no idea what the future holds. I can deal with the future when the future comes. Right now, I need to focus on the now. And right now, I want to focus on what's important to me, which is my family and living a healthy lifestyle. And even if it feels like it's impossible, it's not. Just because it feels that way doesn't mean it is.
Lately, we've discovered something about this squeal that seems to help people even more. So traditionally, we would say, look, pig, you don't have a time machine. The only time I can eat healthy is now. It's always going to be now. The future is an infinite string of nows. And so I'm just never going to binge now, and then I'll never binge again. Lately, we've realized that your now muscle, your ability to be in the present and eat healthy in the present, no matter how tempting the pig is and how loud it squeals to get you into the future, we've realized that that's a muscle that gets stronger with use. And so you can add to this refutation the fact that, yes, I will never binge now, therefore I will never binge again. But because I'm never binging now, my now muscle is getting stronger. So when I reach this hypothetical time in the future called eventually, I'm going to be much stronger with my now muscle than I am now. So there's no way you're going to get me in the future. I'm going to be like a superhero in the future with my now muscle. So take that pick.
I love that. That's incredibly powerful. Very helpful.
Yeah. And then you can ask yourself, close your pig's ears about this, but suppose you do make a mistake in the future. Are you planning to pretend like you're powerless and just eat as much as you can before you get back on track? Or if you notice that you made a mistake, would you just get right back up?
Well, usually I fall into the F-its and just go all out. But I like the idea of, if I slip up, taking a deep breath and just recommitting at that moment to my rules for the rest of my life.
Somebody asked me how I'm so confident and how I can so confidently argue with everyone's pig. And what keeps me going? How come I don't go back? And the answer I gave them was that I'm incapable of going back, because going back to binging means going back to pretending that I'm out of control, pretending that I'm powerless, pretending that I'm helpless against the urge. It surprises some people, but I have made mistakes over the years, not with chocolate, but I've made mistakes over the years. Minimal. And they just don't blow up because I'm incapable of feeling powerless. I've heard so many ridiculous pig excuses, and it's so clear to me that it's just the reptilian brain firing up but I really want it. I really, really want it. I really, 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 really want it. Please, you're powerless. Please, I'm going to get you later. Please do something different about you. Like anything I could imagine, it just seems like a 2-year-old to me, and it's silly. It caused so much damage. That's the cardinal sin in binge eating, is pretending like you're powerless. The devil made me do it. I mean, come on. The devil did not possess you and get you to drive to the store and pick out the package and pay the lady or the man and open it up and go to the back of the parking lot and eat it and throw away the wrapper. The devil didn't make you to do that. You were there the whole time making choices. So because I'm just incapable of feigning powerlessness anymore, that's the fundamental root of my confidence. The fact that I know it's a bodily impulse, I mean, I have other very strong bodily impulses. I drink a lot of water and I have to pee a lot. Seriously, I do. And I'm not going to go in the middle of a business meeting. I'm not going to just go pee on the street. I'm sorry, the devil made me do it. I have a disease. I've got a pee on the street disease. I mean, come on, we have control, and these things might be really tempting. You might make a mistake once in a while. Don't tell your pig that. You always have to aim with perfection. You're powerless? You can't control yourself? Come on, it's ridiculous. I'm also incapable of torturing myself after a mistake anymore, because it became really clear that self-torture after a mistake was just the reptilian's way of getting me to do it again. And so I know what it's up to. So I've got the ultimate confidence that I've got this thing licked, and you can too.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you wanted to ask me or tell me, say before we wind down for today?
No, this has been incredibly helpful. I really appreciate all the work that you've put into the whole entity, and it's certainly helped me and made a huge difference in my life. And thank you for that.
You're very welcome. You're very, very welcome.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.